My name is Alexander Zaitsev, and I am head of the Security Services Expertise Center at Kaspersky. We offer various services to external and internal customers. Security services comprises three main streams: offensive, defensive, and threat intelligence. In the offensive stream, we look at various infrastructures through the eyes of attackers. In the defensive stream, we help our customers with various incidents, engage in monitoring, and focus on threat detection. The threat intelligence stream allows us to stay informed about activities in the so-called deep and dark web concerning attacker interest in our customers. They represent our core activities and vast areas of expertise that allow us to take a holistic view of our customers' security posture. On one hand, we look at a company through the eyes of an attacker, how someone interested in compromising specific business assets or processes would approach gaining unauthorized access or carrying out attacks. That's the offensive part. Defensive is about how we can help customers protect themselves against those looking to attack from the outside. This includes continuous monitoring, threat, and incident response, as well as minimizing the risks associated with the consequences of an attack. We structure our service portfolio to address attacks at various stages of their life cycle. If a customer is targeted by threat actors who are currently in the planning or reconnaissance phase, we try to identify attacker interest in our customers using digital footprint intelligence and brand protection services, uncovering what might interest an attacker, such as data leaks, account sales, etc. The next stage involves addressing the attack execution itself. Here, we recommend our security assessment services, which are essentially simulations of real attacker actions. These allow the defending side to test how their infrastructure, processes, and people behave under a real attack. This happens in controlled conditions and is significantly less expensive than responding to a full-blown incident. If a customer suspects their assets might be compromised, but no direct impact has occurred yet, or they simply observe industry-wide threat actor operations and want to know if they are affected before things escalate, we address these concerns with our compromise assessment service. This is essentially a hunt for attack indicators and signs of compromise within the customer's infrastructure, operating under the assumption that an incident may be ongoing even if it's not yet visible. If an incident does occur, we have a dedicated incident response service. Our main goal here is to help the customer as quickly as possible, contain the attack, and minimize impact.
Наша основная задача – это максимально оперативно помочь заказчику сдержать распространение злоумышленников и минимизировать последствия инцидента.
When discussing the need for attack prevention and infrastructure monitoring, we use our Managed Detection and Response (MDR) solution. It allows experts from our Threat Monitoring and Response Center to monitor our customers' infrastructures and respond promptly to emerging problems. Finally, an important part of our portfolio is helping customers build and improve their security operations functions, which we address through SOC consulting services. This includes assessing the maturity of the customer's existing incident response functions, as well as developing methodologies and playbooks, and improving overall security operations processes for our customers. The key factor giving us an advantage is the combination of both offensive and defensive competencies within a single expertise center. By exchanging findings, knowledge, and understanding of how attackers operate, we continuously improve our own team. The defensive part of the team can learn from those providing security assessment services. Conversely, those engaged in security assessment and pen testing can observe how the Security Operations Center detects different attacks. It's a self-reinforcing system where with every new project and every thwarted attack, we become stronger. Furthermore, being part of a global company gives us a colossal advantage in terms of exposure. Our team responds to incidents across the world, in vastly different companies and industries. The sheer volume of diverse techniques, tactics, procedures, indicators of attack and compromise we constantly observe enriches our capabilities in ways that companies focused on a single industry or market cannot come close to. The most significant trends, which are encountered more and more frequently and sometimes force a rethinking of detection and response approaches, are attacks leveraging trusted relationships and supply chain attacks. In classical attacks seen over many years, attackers might exploit application vulnerabilities or use leaked, reused data. There, it's somewhat clearer that an attack is happening and at what stage it's at. With attacks using trusted relationships, it's less obvious because often the initial target is an intermediary, a partner company, a contractor. These companies often have a relatively low security posture, not always strong in monitoring and attack detection. Attackers can easily establish themselves in their infrastructure, gather useful information about the companies they serve, and then use the contractor's credentials or even their network connections, like VPNs, to gain access to large companies' internal networks directly, without exploiting any vulnerabilities.
Непосредственно уже внутрь сети, без эксплуатации каких бы то ни было уязвимостей, да, и фактически здесь мы говорим о том, что
detecting and responding to such attacks requires a different process and somewhat different competencies than simply reacting to alerts.
Реагировать просто на алерты, например, Web Application Firewall, да. С точки зрения
Regarding attacker motives, the trends are also concerning. We are increasingly seeing attackers aiming not just to gain access or exfiltrate data for later use, but to essentially destroy a company's infrastructure. This imposes its own constraints and additional requirements on how clearly and swiftly detection and response processes must be built. As the time from attack detection to critical impact can often be a matter of hours, sometimes even minutes. Security assessment is precisely about hacking the company, but in a controlled manner. It's an opportunity for the customer to test how their infrastructure, processes, and people would behave in a real attack scenario, but in a more granular, more deliberate way that yields more useful results. Essentially, we examine the company, or an application, or a technological process from the attacker's perspective, through their eyes. We always try to link this to context. For example, when assessing an application's security, we look at the business logic, how the application is used by the customer's clients or internally. We consider what an attacker might want, what benefit they could derive. So we don't just look for application-level vulnerabilities. We try to look deeper and understand what chains of vulnerabilities can be linked into a potentially interesting attack vector for a malicious actor. If we're talking about a broad security assessment of the entire company, for example, how externally exposed assets are protected, or whether or not it's possible to compromise corporate networks or specific internal assets, we're talking about the penetration testing service. In this case, knowing the company name is often sufficient to start. Following an attacker's approach, we initially gather data on how the company is presented online, identifying assets, IP addresses, subnets, domains. Unlike real attackers, we then coordinate this list of identified assets with the customer to confirm ownership and scope. We always strive to include as many assets as possible, because real attackers won't be selective. Then, we essentially simulate real attacks. We identify what services in the scope are interesting to an attacker, how they can be manipulated, what vulnerabilities exist, how they can be exploited, and how exploiting these vulnerabilities can be chained into an attack vector aimed at achieving a potential attacker's goals. Finally, we compile all this information, process it, and provide the customer with recommendations for addressing the issues, both at a technical level and at a higher level, to improve their security posture in the short, medium, and long term.
Digital Risk Protection — это класс сервисов,
Digital
которые
Risk
становятся
Protection,
достаточно популярными
DRP,
у
is a class of
многих
services
заказчиков в связи
popular
с тем,
among various
что
customers because companies face
сталкиваются
risks
с
not only from
рисками не
classic
только
information
классической информационной
security issues
безопасности,
like
как
application vulnerabilities or
уязвимости приложений,
misconfigurations, but
мисконфигурации и
also from
прочее, да,
attacks on their
но и
intellectual
с
property.
атаками на их интеллектуальную собственность. Да, то есть зачастую злоумышленникам
Often, it's
достаточно
enough for
зарегистрировать
attackers to register
домен,
a
похожий
domain
на
similar to the
легитимный домен
company's
компании,
legitimate
правильным
domain,
образом
set up a
укомплектовать
website on
сайт,
it,
который
and
располагается
start
на этом
benefiting
домене, и
from the
уже получать
legitimate
определенную
company's activities.
выгоду для себя в тех или иных задачах. С точки зрения портфеля услуг Digital Risk Protection, мы
Within our
предоставляем
DRP
два ключевых
portfolio,
сервиса.
we provide two
Первый
key
сервис —
services.
это
The first is Digital Footprint
Фактически
Intelligence,
это
which involves
мониторинг
monitoring information
информации,
available about our
доступной о наших
customers from
заказчиках
all
в
possible
всевозможных
sources,
источниках
from
информации,
public forums
начиная с
to the deep and
публичных
dark
форумов
web. For
и
instance, posts
заканчивая
by
deep и
attackers
dark
wanting
web'ом,
to buy
какими-то
access or
постами
employee
злоумышленников о том,
credentials for a
что,
particular
например, они
company,
хотят
or other
приобрести
black market
доступ
orders
или
that
учетные
could
данные
evolve into
сотрудников
real
той или иной
attacks.
компании. Или есть какие-то другие заказы на черном рынке, которые могут впоследствии развернуться в настоящую атаку, да, и мы стараемся предотвратить
We
это
try to
на
prevent
этапе
this at the planning
планирования,
stage.
злоумышленниками
The
подобных
main
мероприятий.
task here is
С
countering
точки
non-classical
зрения второй
attacks on the
части
company.
портфеля
Within this
DRP, к
service,
нашему
we identify
центру
not only
экспертизы и
illegitimate
маркетингу
domains,
команда Brand
but also
Protection,
impersonation of
центр,
social
который
media accounts
занимается
and
защитой
registration of
бренда,
applications
и
mimicking the
основная задача
customer's
здесь как
genuine
раз
apps.
противодействие
These indirect
неклассическим
attacks on
атакам
well-known
на
companies'
компанию.
assets
В рамках
are
данной
becoming
услуги
increasingly popular.
мы выявляем не только нелегитимные домены, но еще и имперсонацию аккаунтов в социальных сетях, регистрация приложений, похожих на настоящие приложения заказчика. Потому что в последнее время все больше и большую популярность набирают как раз вот такие indirect-атаки на активы широко известных компаний. Мы работаем совместно
We work with
с
various organizations to help customers
организациями,
remove
которые
unwanted
позволяют
traces
нам
of
помогать
attacker activity,
заказчикам убирать
such as taking down
нежелательные
domains,
следы
removing
действия атакующих,
applications
как-то
from various platforms,
разделегировать
and
домены,
deleting
убирать
fake social media
приложения
accounts
с разнообразных
impersonating
площадок,
authentic ones.
разрегистрировать аккаунты в социальных сетях, притворяющиеся аутентичными и тому подобное. Если непосредственный инцидент
If an incident itself hasn't occurred yet, but there are suspicions, for example, other companies in the industry are being attacked, or we know one of the company's contractors was compromised previously, we also strive to help our customers proactively before an incident or serious consequences occur. In this situation, the compromise assessment service is highly suitable. Essentially, this is when we assume an incident might have happened, even without clear indicators. We visit the customer or remotely collect information from all available monitoring systems they have deployed. We analyze it, assuming the fact that potential attacker is being present in the infrastructure. We proactively try to find traces of compromise, even if the attackers haven't revealed themselves yet.
Можно сказать, слой защиты, да, с точки зрения того, что компания, что заказчик может
This provides an additional layer of protection, allowing the customer to reduce the likelihood of a real compromise or minimize damage from any future incidents. We understand that such situations are inevitable. When an incident unfolds in real time, it's always an emergency for the company.
И для того, чтобы поддержать наших заказчиков, у нас всегда
To support our
есть команда,
customers,
которая
we
готова
always have a
в режиме
team ready
24/7,
24/7,
365 дней в году, без выходных,
365 days a year,
менять
to be there for
информацию от
them
заказчика и
and respond
отреагировать
to any
на любую
adversarial
ситуацию,
activity in their
происходящую в
infrastructure.
инфраструктуре. Это может быть сделано как удаленно, также это может быть
This can be done
вывести,
remotely
зачастую это
or
вывести на
on-site,
площадку заказчика,
often at the
зачастую это
customer's
не
location,
в рабочее
and
время,
frequently
там,
outside business hours,
вечернее, ночное,
evenings,
выходные дни. Для
nights,
нас это
weekends.
абсолютно штатный выезд, просто в неудобное время и надолго. Наша область реагирования на инциденты
The scope of our
никак не
incident
ограничена
response is not
географически,
geographically
и
limited.
зачастую мы
We often
сталкиваемся
deal
с
with incidents where an
инцидентами,
attack
когда,
starts in one region,
например, атака
in a
может
division of an
начинаться в
international
одном
company,
регионе, в одном
and its target
подразделении
is in a
международной
completely
компании, да,
different
а ее цель
region.
может находиться в совершенно другом регионе, и здесь присутствие в разных регионах
Our
нашей
presence
компании,
and
да, и,
region-specific
соответственно, наличие
expertise in
локальной
different
экспертизы
regions
в
allow us to
ключевых
track
регионах позволяет
attackers
нам
and help our
непосредственно
customers'
отслеживать
representatives
злоумышленников и
regardless
помогать
of geographic
представителям наших
location.
заказчиков вне зависимости от географического местоположения. С точки зрения как раз интересных кейсов, это
A recent
недавний
interesting
случай,
case involved an attack
когда
starting in one
атака,
country,
происходившая
being
в одной
traced to
стране,
another
была
country,
прослежена
and we
до
had one
совершенно
of our
другой страны, и
employees
мы
travel to
попросили
a
одного
data
из наших
center
сотрудников
in that
выехать в
different
дата-центр в тот же
geographic
день
location on
в
the
совершенно
same
другой
day
географической
to gather
локации для сбора
information and
информации и
interact with our customer
взаимодействия
locally.
с нашим заказчиком уже в его локации. Все было сделано, и, конечно,
It was handled
такие
successfully. Such situations
ситуации
highlight the
лишний раз
advantages we
подсвечивают
have by
те
being part of
преимущества,
a
которыми мы
global
обладаем,
company.
являясь частью глобальной компании. Нет, я не считаю, что
No,
можно быть
I don't
абсолютно
believe
защищенным,
one
да,
can
но
be
опять же,
absolutely
понятно,
protected.
это концепция assume breach,
Again,
она
the
предполагает,
assume
что даже
breach
если ты, в принципе,
concept
думаешь, что ты
implies
защищен
that even
сегодня,
if
да,
you think you are
то
secure
завтра
today,
появится новая
a new
уязвимость, да,
vulnerability
и
or new
новые
attacker
какие-то
approach might appear
подходы
tomorrow.
злоумышленников к атакам. Поэтому мы здесь не говорим о концепции какой-то
So,
ультимативной
we're not talking about a
защищенности, да,
concept
мы
of
скорее говорим
ultimate
о
security.
готовности к тому, чтобы
Rather, we're talking
отреагировать
about
на
readiness to respond to an attack
атаку,
that will
которая
happen sooner or
рано или поздно
later.
произойдет. Анализ защищенности — это всегда
A
некоторый снапшот
security
во времени, да,
assessment
то есть
is always
каждый
a
раз, когда
snapshot in
мы
time.
проводим будь то
Every
анализ
time we
защищенности или
conduct a
анализ
security
компрометации,
assessment or a
это
compromise assessment,
всегда некоторый
it's a
срез
slice of the current state.
текущего состояния, да, то есть если даже сегодня, например, там не выявлено каких-то критичных уязвимостей, допустим, на периметре
Even if no
компании,
critical
или не найден
vulnerabilities are
индикатор
found on the
компрометации,
company's
это
perimeter
не значит,
today,
что вот
or no indicators of
отчет,
compromise are
который говорит
discovered,
о том,
it
что
doesn't mean
отныне
the
и впредь
report
можно не
guarantees
беспокоиться о
safety
процессе
going
безопасности, да,
forward.
потому что в любой следующий день может
Because the
быть
very
уязвимость,
next
о которой
day, a
сегодня
vulnerability
неизвестно ни нам, ни
unknown to
злоумышленникам,
us
но
or
завтра это
attackers
будет
today
эксплуатироваться
could be
по всему миру.
exploited
Поэтому здесь
worldwide.
самое главное быть
The key here is
подготовленным
to
к тому, чтобы
always be
правильно
prepared
отреагировать
to
на
respond.
атаку. Для этого у нас есть
For this,
специальное решение,
we have
оно
a specific
называется
solution called Managed Detection and Response,
Фактически
MDR.
это
It provides
непрерывный
continuous
мониторинг и
monitoring of
реагирование на
information
события
security
в
events
безопасности,
and response to
на
adversarial
атаки
actions
в
within our
инфраструктурах
customers'
наших
infrastructures.
заказчиков. Огромное количество информации о всевозможных
A vast amount of information about various attacks, from ordinary malware to global APT group activity, is regularly collected by different experts across our different expertise centers.
И в рамках самого решения MDR мы регулярно
Within the MDR solution itself, we regularly receive a huge number of alerts. All this data is collected, processed, and not just marked as false positives or real attacks. Experts build correlation rules and conduct extensive threat hunting to understand what sequence of actions in the infrastructure looks like in our telemetry, which processes start when, what registry changes appear.
На нашей телеметрии, да, какие процессы, когда запускаются, какие изменения появляются в реестре. Все вот эти низкоуровневые данные из инфраструктуры.
All these low-level data points from the customer's infrastructure and from our own, as it's also under our 24/7 monitoring, are correlated to identify new patterns and provide information on how to detect threats, which in turn feeds back into our products.
О том, как детектировать угрозы, опять же, в наши продукты.
This involves building or improving their own security operations center. Here, we can offer the transfer of our expertise in how we build these processes ourselves. Within the SOC consulting service, we include maturity assessment of current processes because a SOC isn't just technology or security solutions. It's also processes, people, and readiness to execute specific scenarios according to specific playbooks, clearly and coordinately when truly needed.
Соответственно, в рамках оценки зрелости, так называемый SOC Maturity Assessment.
As part of the SOC maturity assessment, we check what processes the customer has, how prepared the monitoring center staff are to operate according to these processes under real threats, create a current as-is picture, bring our views on the desired to-be state, and, by performing a gap analysis, offer recommendations on how to increase the maturity level of the monitoring center.
Предлагаем рекомендации того, как уровень зрелости центра мониторинга повысить. С точки зрения выстраивания компетенций,
for building security operations competencies from scratch, actually establishing a security operations center, we can also offer a set of services from developing a general security operations framework to creating specific playbooks.
До разработки конкретных плейбуков на следующих этапах оценки.
This extends to assessing the capabilities and readiness of the customer's blue team to respond to real threats. This service portfolio includes attack emulation for conducting regular exercises to keep the SOC's skills sharp. The key theme is striving to use the expertise and exposure we have from different perspectives to be more useful to the customer. With each new cycle, each new service implementation, we aim to bring more relevant knowledge to the customer about protecting their infrastructure, responding correctly to specific events, and building effective processes.
Знаний, да, о том, как защитить свою инфраструктуру, как более корректно отреагировать на те или иные события, как выстроить те или иные процессы. Так, например,
For example, a widely discussed topic now is integrating blue team and red team exercises into something greater than the sum of its parts, delivering more comprehensive value by combining offensive and defensive expertise.
Предоставление некоторого более комплексного value для заказчиков от сочетания двух экспертиз, да, атакующей и защищающейся. Потому что по отдельности они
Separately, they offer certain value, and everyone is used to standard pen testing or incident investigation reports.
По расследованию инцидентов, но с учетом того, что, опять же, да,
But since security involves more than just products or processes, it makes sense to look at it holistically and help customers not just fix vulnerabilities or improve metrics like response time, but also highlight blind spots, conduct joint exercises, sit down at the same table, and show, for instance, how our SOC would detect a specific threat during an attack simulation exercise.
И там садиться за общий стол, показывать, как, например, наш СОК обнаружил бы ту или иную угрозу во время проведения упражнения по симуляции атаки. В целом, наверное, в ближайшее время...
In the near future, I'd like to focus on enhancing the value of what we already provide by integrating knowledge and experience from defensive and offensive expertise, showing customers how to improve not only at the technology level, but also at the level of people and processes.
И как можно делать лучше не только на уровне технологий, но и на уровне людей и процессов.
The most important thing, as trivial as it sounds, is having one's eyes burning with passion. Most experts working with us reached their professional level thanks to their ability to self-learn and the internal motivation they initially possessed. A person might not know certain technologies or how to work with specific products, but if they are internally, not externally, motivated to develop in this field, to dig deeper, to sit and analyze interesting vulnerabilities, build attack chains, or inversely, understand how to prevent these attacks by detecting signs of compromise in time. Only then, in my opinion, can they achieve the competencies that formal education or certification do not provide. It's crucial that the person is, first and foremost, driven.
Regarding realistic tasks for the near future,
I'd like to believe we haven't yet reached the maximum level of how useful and relevant our services can be. We constantly strive to improve how we present data in our deliverables. We try to put ourselves in the shoes of the people and business departments of the company we are serving to understand how this data will be processed further, who will take the list of vulnerabilities, what they will do with it next, sort it, assign it to departments for remediation, or just file it away in a ticketing system.
Положит куда-то в тикетницу, да, вот, то есть я думаю, что еще есть пространство.
I think there is still room specifically for improving the level of usefulness. And probably, given that marketing often prevails in the industry, focused on who is cooler, faster, stronger, we like to focus on the real benefits for our customers, look at things through their eyes, and deliver our findings in a way that is genuinely relevant, useful, and actionable. Not just something to put on a shelf and say, now we are protected.